The building stood tall against the night sky, its glass reflecting the streetlights below like shimmering stars anchored to earth. Most of the offices had gone dark by 7 p.m., the busy executives gone to their penthouses, their families, or the bars where deals were still whispered between clinks of glasses. The lobby smelled of polished stone and faint lavender, the signature scent of Hallberg International. Security sat at the front desk half asleep, flipping through a sports magazine, barely lifting his eyes when Jamal walked in through the back entrance. Jamal wore the same dark blue uniform he'd worn for years. The name tag over his heart read, Jamal M., in faded stitching. He never needed to check in anymore. Everyone knew him, or at least, they should have. But nobody really saw Jamal, not the way you'd see a CEO walk by or the head of HR striding down the hall with a purpose. He was background noise. The hum of a vacuum, the soft clatter of a mop bucket rolling across tile floors. He moved through the building like the wind, present, essential, and unseen. He took pride in his work. Every desk was wiped clean with care, every trash bin emptied without a trace. He even straightened chairs and aligned keyboards so the employees would walk into perfection the next morning, never realizing the magic was done while they slept. For Jamal, it was more than a job. It was dignity. His mama had raised him right, and she used to say, "Don't matter what you do it like the whole world's watching." But in 4 years, no one ever watched. Until that Thursday night. It was almost 9:45 p.m. when Jamal reached the top floor, the executive suite. Usually, this floor was deserted by 7 p.m. sharp, but tonight one light still glowed at the end of the hallway. It came from a corner office with tall windows that overlooked the city skyline. Jamal hesitated before pushing his cart forward, his mop leaning against it like a silent partner. He wasn't supposed to interrupt anyone working late, but he also couldn't skip cleaning the office. Protocol was protocol. He decided to knock gently before entering. The door was open a crack. He peered in and saw her, Amelia Rhodes. He'd seen her before, of course. Tall, striking, the kind of woman who carried herself like she owned not just the office but the air around it. She had deep auburn hair always tied in a bun, sharp glasses perched low on her nose, and a way of walking like she was 5 seconds away from solving a national crisis. But Jamal had only seen her from afar. From behind a desk. Through glass. Never like this, alone, quiet, vulnerable. She was sitting on the floor with her shoes kicked off, folders spread around her, her white blouse wrinkled from a long day. Her head was resting against a file cabinet, and in her hand was a half-empty cup of coffee. She looked up at the sound of his knock. "Oh," she said, startled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Didn't know anyone was still here." "Just me," Jamal replied, voice steady but soft. "Didn't mean to disturb you. I can come back if—" No, it's okay," she said quickly. "I was just working late." Again. He nodded, stepping inside slowly. "Mind if I clean around you?" "Go ahead," she said with a tired smile. He moved quietly, careful not to disrupt the papers scattered near her. As he cleaned, she watched him. Something about his calm movements felt soothing in the chaos of her deadlines and numbers. There was rhythm in the way he worked, fluid, precise, almost artistic. "You always this quiet?" she asked suddenly. Jamal looked up, surprised. No one had ever asked him anything up here, not beyond, "Can you take this trash?" Or, "You missed a spot." "Just tryin' not to disturb folks," he said simply. "People up here got important things goin' on." She chuckled, the sound more weary than amused. "Yeah, well, sometimes I wonder if all these important things are just smoke." He didn't respond right away. He finished wiping the desk, then looked at her and said, "Sometimes the quiet work is the most real." Amelia tilted her head. "Is this your only job?" He shook his head. "Nah, I help out at a youth center a couple days a week." Try to give the young brothers a place to be, that ain't the street." She looked genuinely impressed. "That's admirable." He shrugged. "Just tryin' to do my part." They lapsed into silence again. She sipped her coffee while he emptied the trash and realigned her office chair. The kind of silence that felt full, not awkward. Like both of them were on the edge of something unspoken. Jamal noticed the framed photo on her desk. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8, with curly hair and a big smile. "Your son?" he asked. Her eyes flickered to the picture, and for a brief second, her mask slipped. She looked away quickly. "My nephew. My sister passed a few years ago. He lives with me now." Jamal nodded respectfully. "He's got a good smile." "Thanks," she said softly. "He's my whole world." The air grew heavier for a moment, the kind of weight that comes when two people realize they've shared something private and raw. Jamal finished sweeping and wiped down the last windowsill. "Well," he said, gently tipping his cap. "I'll let you get back to it." As he pushed his cart toward the door, she called out, "Wait." He turned, surprised. I've seen you before," she said, standing slowly. "But I never really saw you." He offered a small smile. "Most folks don't." "Well, I do now." Their eyes met, hers tired but searching, his cautious but open. "I'm usually here late on Thursdays," she added. "Maybe next time you can stay a few minutes longer." Jamal didn't say anything at first. He looked at her, at the way she suddenly seemed less like a high-powered executive and more like a woman simply tired of being alone in a glass tower. "I'll be around," he said quietly. "Same time, same floor." As he walked out of the office, something unspoken lingered between them like static in the air, unexpected and electric. And though nothing had truly happened that night, something had shifted. It started with a look. A conversation. An acknowledgement. But in a world where everyone pretended not to notice those who cleaned up behind them, that one moment of connection was louder than any words. Jamal wheeled his cart back into the elevator, his heart beating just a little faster than before. In the quiet of that Thursday night, beneath the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint glow of the city below, something new had begun to stir. Neither of them knew where it was going. But both of them understood one thing. Sometimes, beginnings don't need permission. Sometimes, they just start. "Right here. I didn't catch your last name," she said, her voice gentler this time, almost curious rather than formal. He paused, setting the trash bin down beside her filing cabinet. "It's Moore. Jamal Moore. Jamal Moore," she repeated, letting the syllables settle in her mouth. "Strong name. My mama thought so," he replied with a small smile, wiping down the edge of her desk. Amelia stood again and crossed her arms, leaning against the edge of her window, the skyline behind her shimmering with lights like distant promises. She looked at him differently now, not just the man who swept floors, but a presence, a quiet steadiness she hadn't known she needed. "Can I ask you something personal, Jamal Moore?" He didn't stop working, but his hands moved slower now. "Sure. Why do you stay here? You're obviously sharp, calm, observant. You could be doing 100 other things." He considered the question for a moment. "Because this work matters. Because it's honest. Because it gave me stability when I needed it most." She turned toward him fully, arms still folded but posture less guarded. "When was that?" "About 5 years ago. I was working construction. My cousin got into trouble. Police were involved. Wrong place, wrong time. They questioned me too. Word got out. I couldn't find another job, not with that mess hanging over my head. This was the only place that gave me a shot. I took it, and I've never missed a shift since." Her mouth opened slightly in surprise, as if she didn't expect the man who cleaned her office to have a story. "That's a lot," he shrugged. "Everyone's carrying something. Mine just came with a mop." Amelia walked back to her desk slowly and sat in her chair, her fingers drumming lightly on the armrest. I didn't mean to sound like I was judging your job, she said softly. I guess I've just been so wrapped up in my own world, I forget there are others spinning too. He looked at her, nodded. It's easy to forget, especially up here. A silence passed, not heavy this time, just a shared stillness between two people who were no longer strangers. Do you have any kids? She asked suddenly. Jamal hesitated. No, I wanted to, once. Had a girl when I was younger. Real sweet. We were planning for a future. But life got in the way. She moved on, took a piece of me with her. Amelia didn't press, but she listened. Really listened. It had been years since anyone had spoken to her this honestly. Everyone around her was always performing, colleagues, assistants, even family. But Jamal wasn't performing, he was simply being. She looked at him again and noticed things she hadn't before. The way his shoulders held quiet strength, how his eyes were always scanning, always present. There was no arrogance in him, only calm, deliberate care. You make this office feel warmer, she said suddenly, almost surprised at herself for saying it aloud. Jamal blinked. I just clean. No, she said, shaking her head. I don't know. You bring something. A sense of peace. Like nothing's ever too broken to be cleaned up. He smiled at that, looking down. Maybe that's what I try to do. Clean more than just floors. She stood up again and paced slightly, restless energy buzzing in her. You ever think about doing something more, starting your own business, mentoring full-time, anything? I do mentor full-time. The youth center. That's where my heart is. But businesses take money, and I've never been the kind to chase paper for the sake of paper. But you could, she said. You have the mind for it. Jamal leaned against his cart, arms crossed. And how would you know? Because I've built enough teams to recognize leadership when I see it. He looked at her, his eyes narrowing slightly, not in suspicion, but in surprise. You really see me, huh? I do now, she whispered. The lights buzzed softly above them. Outside the window, a storm was starting to roll in, distant lightning painting brief silhouettes of the city. Amelia walked closer to him. Do you ever get tired of people underestimating you? All the time, he said calmly. But I don't live by their expectations. She stood just a few feet away now, close enough that he could smell the faint perfume she wore, something subtle, floral, and refined. Her gaze stayed locked with his. You know, she said quietly, the strangest thing about this job is how lonely it gets at the top. I imagine so, he replied. Lot of space. Not many people to fill it. Her voice grew softer, more vulnerable. Sometimes I wish I could just start over. Wipe it all clean. Begin. Somewhere simple. Somewhere real. Jamal didn't look away. You can. You just gotta choose to. Her hand lifted slightly, then fell again, like she wanted to reach out but wasn't sure how. The moment sat between them, silent and charged. Do you think, she began, her voice faltering. Do you think, we could start right here? Jamal's breath caught, not because he didn't understand, but because he did, completely. And in that moment, all the lines between title and task, between status and silence, between two different worlds blurred and disappeared. He stepped closer, but not too close. Just enough to meet her where she was. We could, he said softly. But only if it's real. It is, she replied, voice steady now. I don't know where it'll go. I just know I want to know you better. Not as the man who sweeps my office. But the man who looks me in the eye and listens. Jamal nodded, slow and sure. Then we can start. Outside, rain began tapping against the windows, soft and steady like a lullaby for the restless city. Inside, two people stood in the middle of an office usually reserved for silence and routine. But tonight, it held something else, something new. She motioned to the floor. Sit with me. He looked at the papers strewn about, the mess of her week, and smiled. Only if you let me clean a little first. She laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that melted tension from the air. Deal. He cleared a space near the window, then sat across from her on the floor. She offered him a cup of coffee from the fresh pot she'd made minutes ago. He took it. No cream. No sugar. Just like he liked it. They talked for hours. About childhood. About dreams. About regrets. She told him about her parents, her sister, her first failed engagement. He told her about growing up on the South Side, his grandma's house, the first book that made him cry. They shared memories like trading cards, slowly, carefully, truthfully. And when midnight struck and the office floor was quiet enough to hear the rain slide down the windows like soft whispers, they both knew something rare had begun. Not just a friendship, not just a romance, but something earned, something seen, something true. And it started not with grand gestures or sweeping declarations. It started with a question. It started with two people in the stillness of a late-night office. It started with one cleaner, one executive, and one small, daring sentence. "Do you think we could start right here?" And the answer, without a doubt, was yes.